Welcome. Before we begin, I want you to do something for me. Wherever you are right now, whatever is pressing against your mind, whatever the day left behind, I want you to set it down. Not throw it away, just set it down, the way you set down a heavy bag when you come through a door. You can pick it up again in the morning, it will still be there. But for now, set it down. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about a place. It has no precise location on any map, though many maps, if you look at them long enough, seem to suggest it. It sits at the end of a road that only appears when you have been traveling long enough. Not long in miles, necessarily, long in the other ways, the ways that matter more. It is an inn. It is always the same, no matter when you arrive or from where. A stone building, low and wide, with a thatched roof that in wet weather smells of old summers. A door of dark wood, slightly swollen in its frame, so it takes a firm push to open. A window on either side of the door, warm light spilling from both. Inside, a fire. Always a fire, always the right size for the room and the weather and the number of people present. A long table of dark wood, worn smooth by a very great number of elbows and forearms and hands folded in thought. Chairs that seem somehow to be exactly the right height for you specifically. Hooks on the wall for coats and cloaks and traveling things. A smell of bread and wood smoke and something else. Something you don't quite have a word for, but which you remember somehow from a long time ago. The innkeeper has been here since before anyone can remember. She is old, not in a frail way, but in the way of old trees or old mountains or the oldest songs. Old in a way that has moved past worry and arrived somewhere steadier. Her hair is white, and her hands are capable, and she looks at you when you arrive as if she has been expecting you. She always has been. The guests come one at a time. They always arrive the same way, through that swollen door, trailing whatever weather is outside, a little dazed, a little uncertain, as if they are not entirely sure how they got here. They all have the look of people who have been traveling for a very long time. Some of them know that their journey is over. Some are only beginning to understand it. Some will leave in the morning, rested, changed in some way they cannot quite name. Others will stay. The innkeeper never tells anyone which kind they are. She simply puts a fire on, brings them something warm to eat, pulls up a chair, and listens. Tonight, there are 8 guests. 8 people at the end of 8 very different roads. Each of them carrying something they have been carrying for a very long time. The first guest is already at the door. He has been standing there for a moment, one gauntleted hand raised to knock. He has forgotten for just a second how doors work. He has lived for so long in a world where you don't knock. You push through, or you break through, or you hold the line, that the simple act of knocking has become strange to him. His name does not matter. What he was is what matters. What he was for 40 years was a knight. Let the fire settle. Let your breathing slow. Let the road outside fall quiet. We begin. The door opened with the push it always required, and the knight came in. He was a large man, not tall exactly, but wide in the way that a life of armor and effort makes a person wide. The kind of width that comes from having to fill space because that was always what was required of you. He wore no armor now. He had left that somewhere. He could no longer remember where exactly. In a field somewhere, during a long afternoon when he had looked down at the buckles and straps and simply decided that he could not put it back on. Not today. Maybe not again. He wore a plain wool tunic, much too thin for the weather, and his hands were bare. They were extraordinary hands, scarred and thick-fingered and slightly curled, as if, even at rest, they were waiting to grip something. The hands of a man who had held a sword for 40 years. He stood just inside the door and looked around the inn the way a soldier enters any new space, taking in the exits, the sight lines, the positions of other people. But there were no other people. Just the fire, the long table, the smell of bread, and the innkeeper, who was watching him from behind the bar with the same expression she always wore. Patient, unhurried, not at all surprised. "Sit," she said, not unkindly, the way you might say it to someone who has been standing for a very long time and doesn't quite remember that they're allowed to stop. He sat. The chair received him with a solidity that he had not expected. He placed his hands flat on the table, looked at them, looked at the fire, looked at his hands again. The innkeeper set a bowl in front of him. Soup, something with root vegetables and herbs, and a rich, dark broth that steamed gently in the firelight. Bread on the side, the thick, crusted kind that you have to tear rather than slice. A cup of something warm. "I don't know why I'm here," he said. His voice was rough. Not unkind, just rough, the way a voice gets when it has mostly been used for commands. "You came to the end of the road," the innkeeper said. "Everyone who comes here comes the same way." "I was going somewhere," he said. "I had orders." She said nothing. She refilled his cup without being asked. He looked at the soup for a long moment. He could not remember the last time someone had placed food in front of him without him having to secure the perimeter first, without him having to be ready for something. He picked up the spoon, and then he put it down. His hand was shaking slightly. He hadn't noticed it until now. "I've been fighting since I was 17 years old," he said. He wasn't talking to the innkeeper exactly. He was talking the way people talk when they finally say something they have been not saying for a very long time. 40 years, different wars, different kings, different reasons or the same reasons with different names. I was good at it. "I know," she said. "I was very good at it," he said again. There was no pride in his voice, just a kind of weight. The way you say something that used to make you proud and now just makes you tired. He picked up the spoon again. This time he held it. He was working out something, slowly, the way you work out a knot in leather. Not by pulling hard, but by finding the right angle, the right amount of pressure, the right patience. The problem, he had discovered sometime in the last few months, he could not have said exactly when, was this. He did not know what he was if he was not fighting. It had come to him during a siege, a long siege, the boring kind where both sides wait for the other to run out of food or will. He had been sitting on a hillside, watching the castle below, and he had thought, quite suddenly and clearly, the way you think thoughts that have been waiting for a quiet moment. What am I for when this is over? He had not been able to answer the question. He had pushed it away. There was still the siege to attend to. And the siege had ended, and there had been another campaign, and then another. But the question had not gone away. It had followed him from campaign to campaign like a quiet soldier, never quite in sight, never quite out of it. He ate some of the soup. It was extraordinary, not because it was complicated, but because it was exactly right. Because it tasted like something made for him specifically, not for soldiers in general. He could not remember the last time he had eaten something that tasted like it was meant for him specifically.
"What do you do," he said slowly, "when the only thing you were ever good at is the thing you can't do anymore?"
The innkeeper sat down across from him. She folded her hands on the table. She had the quality of someone who is in no hurry. Not because nothing matters, but because she has learned that hurrying rarely changes the important things.
What were you good at? She asked. What, specifically?
He started to say fighting, warfare, strategy, the management of violence, but she was looking at him steadily, and something in her look made him think more carefully.
He thought about it for a long time, staring at the fire.
I was good at knowing what other people needed, he said at last. In a battle. What they needed from me. Whether they needed someone to charge or someone to hold the line. Whether they needed a voice or silence. Whether they needed to be pushed or steadied. He paused. He had surprised himself. He had never said this before. I could read a man in the middle of chaos, he continued slowly. When everything was noise and blood and fear, I could look at someone and know. He needs to feel that someone else has a plan. Or he needs to know his family will be cared for if today is his last day. Or simply, he needs to hear his own name said aloud by someone who means it. The innkeeper nodded very slightly. That is not fighting, she said. That is something else entirely. He looked at her. He had not thought of it that way. He had filed it under fighting, as a skill of battle, a tool of war. But she was right. It wasn't, not really. You could do that same thing anywhere. You could do it here, in this room, right now. I held my youngest brother while he died, the knight said. His voice was even. He had long ago made peace with the fact of it, or made something that looked like peace. At the Battle of Ravenford, he was 19. He had been following me into wars since he was 15 because our father said to, and because I was the one who went first, and he always followed where I went. He stopped. The soup bowl was empty. He had eaten it all without noticing. I held him, and I said his name, and I said, "You are the bravest person I have ever known." And I meant it. He was. He was afraid of everything, spiders and loud noises and meeting new people, and he came into those battles terrified every single time. And he came anyway. That is braver than anything I ever did. I was never afraid. I'd lost the ability to be afraid somewhere around the age of 22, and I never got it back. The fire shifted. A log settled. The inn was very quiet. I have never said that before, he said. Any of it. I know, the innkeeper said. She rose and took his bowl and brought it back full. He did not argue. He ate again, more slowly this time. He was beginning to understand that there was no hurry here. That was a strange feeling. His whole life had been organized around urgency, around the understanding that time was short and the enemy was close and the margin for error was thin. Here, the margin seemed infinite. He thought about his brother, Alric. He had not said his name to anyone in 30 years. There had been no one to say it to. The people who had known Alric were mostly dead or old and scattered, or had stopped expecting to hear his name. Alric, he said aloud. The innkeeper looked at him and waited. His name was Alric. He liked birds. He kept a journal of every bird he saw, with drawings, very precise drawings. He had a good hand. He said that drawing a bird carefully was a way of thanking it for existing. The knight stopped. I kept the journal. after. I have carried it for 30 years. I don't know why. I can't read his handwriting very well. He wrote small, very small. But I have carried it. The innkeeper said nothing. She let the silence do what it was doing, which was making space for something that had been compressed for a very long time. I thought the fighting would be in honor of him, the knight said. Every campaign that I was fighting to make the world he died in a better place. But somewhere along the way, I don't know when, I stopped fighting for anything. I was just fighting because it was what I did. Because stopping meant sitting in a room alone with all of it. He looked around the inn. He was sitting in a room. He was not alone, quite, and the ceiling had not come down. "Is this what it feels like?" he asked. "Just sitting?" "Yes," the innkeeper said. "Give it time." She set a candle on the table between them. It was a good candle, a slow-burning one, the kind that doesn't gutter or flicker unless there's a wind, and there was no wind in here. He watched it for a while. He could hear the fire. He could hear, distantly, the weather outside. Rain, he thought, moving across the roof in the patient way that rain moves when it has nowhere to be.
He reached inside his tunic and brought out a small book. It was worn nearly to nothing, the cover soft as cloth, the spine reinforced with strips of leather that were fraying now. He set it on the table between himself and the innkeeper. She looked at it, and then at him. "His," he said. The innkeeper picked up the journal carefully, the way you pick up something that has been handled by grief for a very long time and is fragile in ways that have nothing to do with paper. She turned the pages slowly. He watched her face. She looked at each drawing with full attention. Not the polite attention of someone looking at a child's drawing to be kind. Real attention. The kind you give to something that deserves it. "He was good," she said. "He was very good," the knight said. "He would have been extraordinary, given time." She turned another page, a heron, meticulously detailed, standing in what appeared to be a shallow river. Below the drawing, in the small, cramped handwriting, "Heron at the ford near Caldwell, watching for an hour before it moved. It did not seem to know I was there, or perhaps it did not care. Either way, I stayed very still." The knight read it over her shoulder. He had not read those words before. He had carried the book for 30 years without being able to read it. Now he read them, and he sat back in his chair. "He was watching herons while I was winning battles," he said. Not bitterly, wonderingly, as if he had just understood something that had been right in front of him for a long time. "And who do you think contributed more to the world?" the innkeeper asked. She said it without sharpness, as a genuine question. He sat with that for a long time. The truth, which he had never let himself think all the way through, was that he was not sure. He had spent 40 years being certain. Certainty was a tool of his trade. You could not lead people into danger without it. And now certainty had failed him. And what was left in its place was something much more uncomfortable and much more interesting. The truth was that he could name 12 battles he had won. He could name the strategic outcomes. He could describe the political consequences. And he could not say, with any honesty, whether any of it had made things better. It had made them different. He was less sure every year about better. Ulrich's heron, on the other hand, was a fact of pure goodness. It existed in that journal and would go on existing, and anyone who looked at it would be briefly in the presence of a 19-year-old boy who stayed very still for an hour on a riverbank in order to properly honor a bird. "I don't know what I'm for," the knight said again. But it sounded different now. Not like a crisis, like the beginning of a question. "That is the right place to start," the innkeeper said. She brought him something else, a small plate of things he couldn't quite identify in the firelight. Sweet things, he discovered. Honey and some kind of nut, something pressed into a dense square. He ate it without thinking, the way you eat when you've stopped monitoring yourself. "When did you last sleep?" she asked. He thought about it. Really slept, she meant. Not the half-alert soldier's sleep that he had learned to live on, where part of him was always listening, always waiting for something to go wrong. "I don't remember," he said. "The room at the top of the stairs," she said. "The bed has been aired. There's a window that faces east. If you want to see the sun come up, you will. If you don't, there are shutters." He sat for a moment longer. He was not sure he was ready. He had the feeling that sleep, real sleep, the kind she was talking about, would require him to put down something he had been holding for a very long time. And he wasn't sure he knew how. "The journal," she said. "Leave it on the table. It will be here when you wake." He looked at the journal. He looked at the fire. He looked at his hands, which had stopped shaking. He stood. He was not entirely steady, not from weakness, from something else. From the unfamiliar experience of a body that has been holding itself in battle readiness for 4 decades and is, for the first time, beginning to let go of that posture. He walked to the stairs. At the bottom step, he stopped. "Ulrich would have liked this place," he said. "There are probably birds." "In the morning," the innkeeper said, "you could look." He went up the stairs. The innkeeper stayed by the fire and listened to his footsteps, heavy at first, the heavy footfall of a man who has spent his life moving with armor and urgency. Then slower. Then, at last, quiet. She picked up the journal from the table. She turned to the last page that had writing on it. A drawing of a sparrow, hurried, less finished than the others, as if Ulrich had known he was running out of time. Below it, in the small, cramped handwriting, "Grey sparrow on a fence post outside camp." It turned its head and looked at me for a long moment. I think it was deciding something about me. I hope I passed. She set the journal back on the table. She set Ulrich's drawing of the sparrow facing up toward the ceiling, toward whatever was above ceilings, as a kind of offering, as a kind of acknowledgement. Upstairs, the knight sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The room was small and warm. There was a window with shutters, as she had said. There was a blanket of considerable weight and evident age. There was a candle on the table by the bed that had already been lit. There was nothing else. It was exactly enough. He sat on the edge of the bed, and he did something he had not done since he was a young man, something that had been sealed off inside him for decades, behind all the campaigns and the commands and the necessary hardness. He put his face in his hands. He did not make a great deal of noise. He was not built for that kind of grief. But his shoulders shook for a while, very slightly, in the way of someone who has been carrying something much too heavy for much too long, and has only just, in a small, warm room with a candle and a view of the east, set it down. After a while he stopped. He dried his face on his sleeve in a practical way. He took off his boots, an unexpectedly difficult process when your hands have forgotten how to perform gentle tasks. And he lay down on the bed. The blanket was extraordinary.
Not the finest thing he had ever felt. He had slept under silk in palaces. But this had a weight and a warmth that silk doesn't have. It felt like being held in place, like being told, "You do not have to move. Not tonight. Perhaps not ever again if you don't want to, but certainly not tonight." He lay on his back and looked at the ceiling. He thought about Ulrich looking at the heron. An hour of stillness. The bird not knowing or not caring. The careful drawing afterward. The way that a person could choose to spend an hour of their life quietly honoring something. He thought, I could do that. Not the drawing, he had never had a hand for drawing, but the stillness, the attention, the staying in one place long enough to properly see what was there. He had never done that, not once. In 40 years of moving through the world, he had never stayed still long enough to see it. He closed his eyes. The candle was still burning, soft and steady, when he fell asleep. It was still burning when he dreamed of Ulrich. Not the death, for once, but the life. A boy crouched by a river, completely absorbed, pencil moving carefully across paper. Not afraid of anything, just watching. In the morning, and it was a beautiful morning, pale gold light coming in around the shutters, birdsong from somewhere outside, the knight opened the shutters. He leaned on the windowsill and looked out. There was a garden below the inn, and in the garden, on a low stone wall, a sparrow, small and grey and precise. It turned its head and looked up at him for a long moment. He looked back. He stayed there for a long time, longer than he would have thought possible, longer than he had ever stood still in his life, just watching the small bird on the stone wall in the morning light. Just learning, for the first time at almost 60 years old, how to do the thing his brother had always known how to do. The bird flew away eventually. He watched it go. He did not feel finished. He felt like someone who has just understood that he is not, after all, at the end. That there is a different kind of road, quieter, slower, with much more looking and much less moving, that he has not yet walked. He went downstairs. The journal was on the table. The innkeeper was at the fire. She looked at him with the expression she had, the patient one. "There was a sparrow," he said. "I know," she said. He picked up the journal. He held it for a moment. Then, carefully, he put it in his pocket. He put on his boots. He walked to the door. He turned back once. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, as if she had been thanked this way before, as if she would be thanked this way again. He pushed through the door. Outside, the morning was very bright. The road that had brought him here was gone. There was a different road now, narrower, greener, running through a meadow toward a wood he didn't recognize. He walked toward it, not with urgency, for the first time in 40 years, without urgency. The innkeeper cleared the night's bowl. She wiped down the table. She set the candle back in its holder. Outside, the morning had become afternoon. Inside the inn, it was still evening. It was always evening inside the inn. Always the hour when the fire is exactly right and the light is soft and there is nowhere else you need to be. The door opened. She came in with the energy of someone who has been moving very fast for a very long time and has just finally stopped. She stood in the doorway, breathing, not catching her breath exactly, but as if she had forgotten to breathe for a while and was just
remembering. She was young, perhaps 23, perhaps 25. She wore a dress that had clearly started the day as something formal, pale blue, well-made, the kind of dress that says, occasion. It was now grass-stained at the hem, and there was mud on the left side, as if she had stumbled at some point and caught herself on one knee. Her hair, which had probably been arranged carefully that morning, was mostly loose. She looked around the inn. She looked at the innkeeper. "I'm not sure I know how I got here," she said. "Nobody does," the innkeeper said. "Come in, sit down." Her name was Clara, though she had not used it today. She had not used it because today she had not been herself. She had been a version of herself that other people had built and furnished and arranged, and she had walked out of that version at 7:30 this morning, and she had been walking ever since. It had been her wedding morning. She sat down in the chair across from the innkeeper and she looked at the fire, and she felt the exact feeling of someone who has done something enormous and is not yet sure whether it was the right enormous thing. "I left," she said. She said it the way you say something when you are still surprised by your own behavior. "This morning, I left." The innkeeper set a cup in front of her, something warm. Clara wrapped both hands around it and held it, the heat grounding her in the way that heat does when you are not quite sure what reality you are currently in. "From what?" the innkeeper asked. "My wedding," Clara said. And then, because that sentence needed more structure than it had, "I was supposed to be married this morning, at 10 o'clock. Everyone was there, his family and my family, and all the people I have known my whole life. Which is not that many, because the village isn't large, but it felt like the whole world. Because it was the whole world. My whole world. And I was dressed. I had the dress on. My mother had pinned up my hair. I was standing at the door of the church with my father's arm in mine, and She stopped. She looked at the fire. "I couldn't go in," she said. The innkeeper waited. She was very good at waiting. "Not because I don't care for him," Clara said. "Edmund is a good man. He's kind and reliable, and he will be a good father, and he has never been anything but decent to me. Everyone said we were suited. My mother said it. His mother said it. The priest said it. The whole village agreed." She turned her cup slowly in her hands. But standing there at the door of the church, I had the thought, and I have never had this thought before, or if I have had it, I have never let it stay. I had the thought, whose life is this? The question sat in the room between them like something with its own weight. "Because I looked at the life I was walking into," Clara said, "and it was a perfectly good life. A good house, a good man, children probably in a few years. The village, the same roads I had always walked, the same seasons, the same people saying my name in the same ways. Mrs. Harno, Clara Harno, Edmund's wife. And I thought, but is it mine? Did I choose it? Or did I just go along with it? Because going along was easier than the alternative, and the alternative was frightening, and I was never quite brave enough to ask out loud what the alternative actually was. She picked up the cup and drank. She did not know what was in it. It was warm and slightly sweet and tasted like something she had never had before, but which felt familiar in the way of things that are simply right. "I let go of my father's arm," she said.
and I walked. I just walked. I didn't go back to get anything. I walked away from the church and away from the village, and I have been walking all day, and somehow I am here." "And Edmund?" the innkeeper asked. Clara closed her eyes briefly. "Edmund will be all right. That is one of the things that is true about Edmund. He will be all right. He is that kind of person. It is one of the things I admire about him, and one of the things that made me feel, standing at the door of the church, that he did not need me. Not specifically. He needed a wife who suited him, and there are other women who suit him, and one of them will find him and be happy. But it wouldn't have been me making her happy. It would have been the role, the shape of the thing." She opened her eyes. "Does that make sense?" "Yes," the innkeeper said. "It makes complete sense." The innkeeper brought her food. Something simple. A bowl of something warm, bread, a small dish of something she couldn't identify, but which tasted of autumn. Clara ate slowly, which surprised her. She had expected to be too agitated to eat, but there was something about this room that made agitation difficult to maintain. "I keep thinking about their faces," she said. "When I walked away, I didn't look back, but I could feel it. My mother's face, Edmund's face, all of them standing there, not understanding." "And did that stop you?" the innkeeper asked. "No," Clara said, and then, "Should it have?" The innkeeper looked at her steadily. "What do you think?" Clara sat with that. She had spent her whole life thinking about other people's faces, what they needed from her, what they expected, whether she was providing it. She had been raised to consider this a virtue, to be thoughtful of others, to put their comfort alongside yours, or sometimes ahead of it. And it was a virtue. She didn't want to dismiss it entirely. But somewhere in the long practice of considering everyone else's feelings, her own had become very quiet. Not gone, she was feeling them quite loudly right now, but quiet, waiting in a small room somewhere, hoping someone would remember to ask. "My mother is going to be devastated," she said. "She planned this for 2 years. The dress took 4 months. She sewed parts of it herself." "I know," the innkeeper said. "And my father is going to be not devastated. He's not a devastated kind of man, but he will be quiet for a very long time. He will not understand. He will think I've been foolish or cowardly, or both." "And are you?" "I don't know," Clara said honestly. "I've been asking myself that all day. Was I brave, or was I just frightened? Was I being true to myself, or was I simply running away from something hard? Because marriage is hard, I know that. It is not supposed to be easy. Standing in a room with another person and choosing them, year after year, is not meant to be painless. Maybe I was just afraid of the difficulty." The innkeeper said nothing. She let Clara think. "But," Clara said slowly, feeling her way towards something, "there is a difference between being afraid of difficulty and being afraid that you are in the wrong life. Those are different kinds of fear. One of them means you should push through. The other means something else." "Which kind were you feeling?" the innkeeper asked. Clara looked at her. She had been asking herself this all day, and the answer had not been clear. It had been muddied by guilt and grief, and the very specific anxiety of having done something that could not be undone. But sitting here, in this room, with this woman who looked at her as if she already knew the answer and was simply waiting for Clara to find it herself, sitting here, Clara let the question settle all the way to the bottom. The second one. she said quietly. It was the second kind. I was not afraid of being married. I was afraid of being married to the wrong life. Of arriving at 50 years old in a house I had not chosen, beside a man I had not chosen, wearing a face I had been performing for 20 years, and realizing that somewhere along the way I had missed the place where I was supposed to turn. The room was very quiet. The fire was very steady. I don't know what the right life is, Clara said. I don't have a plan. I have nothing, actually. I have a grass-stained dress and an empty afternoon and absolutely no idea what comes next. That is not nothing, the innkeeper said. That is the beginning.
They sat together for a while without speaking. Clara found that she did not need to fill the silence. This was unusual. She was a person who had always filled silences, had been trained to fill them, had been told that letting silence fall was a kind of rudeness or a kind of coldness, and neither was acceptable. Here, the silence was not cold. It was warm, textured, full of the small sounds of the fire and the occasional shift of the building settling into itself, and once what she thought might be an owl somewhere outside. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said after a while. "Yes," said the innkeeper. "Do you know, can you tell whether I did the right thing? Whether this was courage or cowardice?" She paused. "I'm not asking you to make me feel better. I'm asking honestly." The innkeeper was quiet for a long moment, not avoiding the question, considering it properly. "I think," she said at last, "that those two things are less different than people suppose. A great deal of courage looks like cowardice from the outside, and a great deal of what we call bravery is simply someone doing what was expected of them, without asking whether what was expected was right." Clara absorbed this. "What I can tell you," the innkeeper continued, "is what I see when I look at you. I see a person who was standing at a door and understood with great clarity that walking through it would mean saying goodbye to something she had not yet properly said hello to. And instead of walking through anyway, because that was the easier thing, the thing already arranged, she stopped and walked away," Clara said. "And walked here," the innkeeper said, "which is not the same as away. Away suggests flight. This road doesn't go away from things. It goes toward something. That's why you're here and not somewhere else." Clara looked at her hands. The ring she had been wearing for 3 months since the engagement, was still on her finger. She hadn't noticed until now. She looked at it for a long time. Then she took it off. She placed it on the table between herself and the innkeeper. She looked at it sitting there, small and gold, and no longer on her finger, and she felt the full weight of what she had done today. Not guilt, just weight. The appropriate weight of a decision that will cost something real. "I will have to go back," she said. "Eventually. Not today. But I will have to go back and face them, and explain, as best I can explain it, and there will be a great deal of pain in that, for them and for me." "Yes," the innkeeper said simply. "But not tonight," Clara said. "No," the innkeeper agreed. "Not tonight." The innkeeper put the ring on a small shelf by the window, not discarding it, simply setting it aside. It would be there if Clara wanted it, or it would not be if she didn't. Either way, tonight it didn't need to be on her finger. "What did you want to be?" the innkeeper asked. "When you were young, before the wanting was organized into something specific and approved." Clara looked at her. It was such a simple question that it caught her off guard. "I wanted to travel," she said immediately. The answer had been waiting. She had not known how close to the surface it was until the question opened a space for it. "I wanted to see the mountains in the east. I read about them. There was a book, a traveler's account, in the library at the school, and I read it so many times the binding came loose. The way he described them, the light on the snow at sunset, the sound the wind makes at altitude, the way the whole world looks small when you are high enough up." She had not talked about this since she was about 16, when it had become clear that talking about it was impractical and made the adults around her uncomfortable. "I wanted to keep a journal," she said. "I wanted to draw what I saw. I'm not a very good artist, but I thought that with practice..." She stopped. "I still have the book, the traveler's account. I have kept it all these years. I don't know why. Or I suppose I do know why. I kept it because I was not ready to stop wanting what it described." The innkeeper looked at her with an expression that Clara did not quite have a word for. Not approval exactly, not the parental kind, the kind that comes with conditions, something more generous than that. Something that looked like recognition. "The mountains are real," the innkeeper said. "The book was accurate." Clara looked at her. "You've seen them?" "Many people have passed through here who have come from them," the innkeeper said, "or who were on their way. The light at sunset is exactly as he described. The wind sound is, if anything, better than words can manage." Clara sat for a long time after that, looking at the fire. She was doing something she had not done in years. She was imagining a future that was not the future she had been imagining. Not the house with Edmund, the children, the seasons, a different one. Smaller in some ways, no house, no certainty, no someone beside her. Larger in others. She was afraid of it. She would be foolish not to be afraid of it. She had no money beyond what was in her pocket. She had no plan. She had a grass-stained dress and a book she had kept for sentimental reasons, and a room upstairs at an inn she had arrived at by unclear means. But the fear was not the paralyzing kind. It was the kind that comes before things, not instead of them. "The room at the top of the stairs," the innkeeper said. "Same as always. It has been aired." Clara nodded. She rose from the table. She felt not light exactly. The weight of today was still very present, but different. As if something that had been pressing from the outside had, at some point during this evening, stopped pressing. She paused at the foot of the stairs. "Will the road be there in the morning?" she asked. "The road that brought me here, or a different one?" "A different one," the innkeeper said. "The road that brought you here only goes one direction. But there are other roads." "Where do they go?" "Wherever you decide to go," the innkeeper said. "That's what's different about the roads that leave here. They go where you choose. The roads that come here, those are different. Those come to you whether you choose them or not." Clara went upstairs. She lay on the bed without changing. The dress was ruined anyway, and she looked at the ceiling. She thought about mountains. She thought about journals and drawings made with unpracticed hands that improve over time if you keep making them. She thought about her mother's face, and she let herself feel the full grief of that, the love and the guilt, and the knowledge that love and guilt can coexist without one cancelling the other.
She thought about Edmund. She hoped, genuinely, that he would find the right life. She suspected he would. He was that kind of person. She thought about the mountains in the east. She thought about the light on the snow at sunset. She fell asleep before she expected to, and she dreamed of altitude. The specific dream of someone who has never been high up, but has imagined it so many times, it has become a memory. The cold air, the silence, the whole small world below. In the morning, she was the first one up. The innkeeper was already at the fire, and there was bread on the table, and there was a small pack by the door that hadn't been there the night before. Inside it, when she opened it, warm things for cold weather. Good boots. A journal, blank, the kind with a strong binding. A stick of charcoal for drawing. She looked at the innkeeper. "I didn't pack this," Clara said. "No," the innkeeper agreed. Clara picked up the journal. She ran her thumb across the blank first page. "Thank you," she said. The innkeeper nodded in her way. Clara put on the boots. She picked up the pack. She went to the door and pushed it open, that firm push it always required. And outside, the morning was cold and bright, and the road ran east. She walked toward it without hesitation, or with hesitation, and through it. Those two things, she was discovering, were not the same. The innkeeper watched Clara go. Then she went to the small shelf by the window and picked up the ring. She held it for a moment, not with sentiment, but with the attention she gave to all things that had once meant a great deal and now meant something different. She set it back on the shelf. Some things left when their people left. Others stayed. She never quite knew which kind a thing was until the morning came. The afternoon light shifted. Not that it was afternoon in any ordinary sense, just that the quality of the light through the windows changed in the way that suggested time had moved in the way it moves outside. The door opened with its familiar resistance. He was a compact man, weather-worn in the particular way of people who spend their lives at the edge of the sea. His skin was the color of old timber. His hands were large and careful-looking, the hands of someone who has spent decades working with precision in difficult conditions, adjusting things in wind and rain and dark. He was perhaps 60, perhaps older. He wore a heavy wool coat that was stiff with salt. He stood in the doorway and looked at the fire, and something in his face did something that was not quite the relaxation of a man coming in from the cold. It was something older than that. The recognition of warmth by someone who has been in the dark a very long time. "Sit down," the innkeeper said. "I'll put something warm in front of you." He sat. He folded his hands on the table. He had the stillness of someone who has spent a great many years in a small space and has learned how to be very still in it. "My name is Thomas," he said. "I kept the light at Carrow Head for 39 years. "I know," the innkeeper said. Thomas Marsh had been the keeper of the light at Carrow Head for 39 years, 4 months, and 11 days, which he knew precisely because he had kept a log, as all keepers did, and the last entry was the day before yesterday. The light was automated now, had been for a week. A machine did what he had done, turned itself on at dusk, off at dawn, maintained the correct brightness, sent a signal to the mainland if anything went wrong. It did all of this without sleeping, without eating, without looking out to sea at 3 in the morning when the weather was bad and wondering about the ships. He had spent the last week at the lighthouse watching the machine do his job. He had told himself he was making sure the transition went smoothly. The truth was closer to he did not know how to leave. He had lived in that lighthouse for 39 years. He had not had a conversation that wasn't over a radio in, he could not quite calculate how long. A long time. "The thing is," he said, once the innkeeper had set food in front of him and he had eaten some of it in silence. "I knew it was coming. The automation. We all knew. There are only a handful of us left, keepers, I mean, and they were replacing us one by one, working outward from the cities. I knew for years that Carrow Head would be on the list eventually." "But knowing it was coming didn't help?" the innkeeper asked. "No," he said. "It's like knowing a storm is coming. Knowing doesn't keep you dry." Carrow Head was a rocky promontory on a coastline that was beautiful in a very particular way. Beautiful the way dangerous things are beautiful. The light had stood there since before Thomas's grandfather's time. Thomas had first seen it when he was a boy. His father had brought him to the coast once, and they had sat on the rocks below and looked up at the light sweeping around above them. And Thomas had felt something he could not name then and could barely name now. A kind of recognition, as if something in the light already knew him. He had applied to be a keeper at 21. He had been assigned to Carrow Head at 22 as assistant keeper under an old man named Branner, who smelled of pipe tobacco and the sea, and who taught Thomas everything in the precise and patient way of someone who had been waiting for a worthy student. Branner had died in Thomas's 8th year there, a quiet death. He had simply not come down to breakfast one morning, and Thomas had found him still in his chair by the window, looking out to sea with an expression of perfect peace. Thomas had kept the log that morning. Keeper Branner, Joseph, died in the night. Light maintained without interruption. He was 81 years old and had been a keeper for 53 years. I will try to be worthy of it. After that, he was alone. He had not minded. He had known by then, 8 years in, that he was a person built for solitude. Not unable to connect with others. When the supply boat came, he enjoyed the conversation, asked after everyone's families, listened well. But he returned the solitude afterwards the way you return to a beloved room, with relief, with the recognition of home. "The light," he said. "Every night I turned it on, and every morning I turned it off." That sounds simple. It was not simple. It was the whole shape of my days. Everything else arranged itself around the light. "Tell me about it," the innkeeper said. She meant, tell me precisely. Tell me what it actually was like, not the outline of it, but the texture. He looked at her and understood that she meant this. She wasn't asking to fill silence. She was asking because she wanted to know. "At dusk," he said, "there is a specific quality of light, the last light before dark, that is unlike any other light. It is both ending and beginning. It has this thinness, as if the air itself is becoming something else." That was the moment I would go up to light the lamp. Every night. And every night, no matter how many thousands of times I had done it, there was a moment when the lamp first caught and the light went out. Not outward. When I felt it in my chest, a kind of, I don't know the exact word, pride is wrong. It's more like rightness, like, yes, this is what I am for. "And the ships?" the innkeeper asked. Thomas's face changed slightly. It was the face of someone who has thought about something for a long time and has never quite said it aloud because the person to say it to had not been there. "I never met them," he said, "the people on the ships. I saw the ships, sometimes very well, sometimes just lights in the dark or shapes against the storm. But the people on them I never met. I only knew them as things that needed the light to be safe."
He stopped. "But I thought about them," he said. "Every ship I saw, I wondered, who is on that ship? Where are they going? What are they hoping for? And the light, my light, was the thing between them and the rocks. For 39 years, I was between those people and the rocks, and they never knew my name." The innkeeper looked at him. "Did you want them to?" "No," he said with some surprise. "No, I didn't. Wanting them to know would have been the wrong reason to do it. I wasn't keeping the light so that people would know I was keeping the light. I was keeping it because..." He stopped again. "Because the rocks were there," the innkeeper said gently. "Because the rocks were there," he agreed. "Because someone had to. Because knowing that there was a light that would reliably be there every single night without exception, I think that matters. I think that is worth something, even if no one knows your name. Maybe especially if no one knows your name." He had been thinking, since the light was automated, about worth, about what makes something worth doing. The machine now kept the light as reliably as he had, more reliably, in fact, since machines don't get sick or have bad nights. And so the question, which he had not wanted to ask, but which had made itself unavoidable, was, had what he'd done mattered? Had there been a difference between a man keeping the light and a machine keeping the light? "I think there is a difference," he said, working it out as he spoke. "I think the consciousness of it matters. The fact that there was someone up there who was aware of the ships, who was not just producing light, but was present, who was keeping watch in the full sense of the word." "Do you think the ships knew?" the innkeeper asked. He considered this. "I don't think it works that way. I don't think the ships felt it, the presence, the watchfulness. But I think I felt it. And I think that feeling was the thing that made me reliable. A machine cannot worry. I worried every bad night. I worried about the ships in the storm, even though worrying achieved nothing practical. And the worry kept me sharp, kept me paying attention, kept me, in some way I can't quite articulate, more than a machine." The innkeeper brought him more of whatever it was he had been eating. He had barely noticed what it was, which was unusual for him. Lighthouse keeping had made him very attentive to small things, including food, which you appreciate differently when you are alone, and it must be simple. "What will you do?" she asked. He looked at her. It was the question he had been unable to answer for a week. "I don't know," he said. "I have a sister in the city. I haven't seen her in 11 years. She has children. I don't know how old they are now, I've lost track. She writes sometimes. I write back." He looked at the fire. "I suppose I could go there." "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want," he said. "Wanting feels unfamiliar. For 39 years, what I wanted and what was needed were the same thing. The light needed to be kept. I wanted to keep it. There was no gap between wanting and doing. Now there is a gap, and I don't know what to put in it."
After a while, after more food, more warmth, more fire, the innkeeper asked him something he had not expected. "What did you see?" she asked. "In 39 years at Carrow Head, what did you see that other people don't see?" He looked at her for a moment, and then something in his face changed. Something that had been closed for a long time opened slightly, like a shutter in a lighthouse. "The sea at every hour,"
he said, "in every weather, at every season. I have seen the sea completely flat and completely still, like a mirror that reflects not just what is above it, but what is possible. I have seen it white with storm, and I have seen the waves 40 feet high, and I have been in the lantern room with those waves below me, feeling the whole tower move very slightly, like breathing. I have seen the sea in the moment before a storm that no instrument predicted. The quality of it changes, the color, the sound. You can learn to read it." He was not the same man who had walked in. Something had come back into his voice, warmth or certainty, or the particular authority of someone talking about the thing they know best. "I have seen the sea on nights when it was phosphorescent," he continued. "Do you know what that is? In summer sometimes, in calm water, there are tiny organisms, bioluminescent. They glow when disturbed, and the whole sea lights up. A ship's wake becomes a trail of cold blue fire. I have seen that from the lantern room 100 feet up, and it looked like the sea was dreaming." He stopped. He had not meant to say that last part, but the innkeeper was looking at him with full attention, and it had come out anyway. "I have seen the sun come up over the water," he said, quieter now, "every morning for 39 years. I have seen it in every possible state, brilliant and clear and burning, and hidden behind cloud, so that the light comes up grey and gradual, and once, just once, a green flash as the sun cleared the horizon on a perfectly clear morning. Some sailors believe that is luck. I saw it once in 39 years, and I will tell you, it felt like luck. It felt like a gift." The inn was very quiet. The fire was very steady. "That is not nothing," the innkeeper said, "what you saw, what you kept." "No," he said, "it isn't." He said it slowly, as if he was understanding it for the first time. "It isn't nothing at all." He sat with that for a while. The specific dignity of what he had done, not its scale, it had no scale, one man in one lighthouse on one coast, but its quality. The quality of 39 years of attention paid to something that mattered, in the dark, for no personal recognition. "The machine doesn't see it," he said. "The phosphorescence, the green flash, the quality of the sea before a storm. The machine keeps the light and does not see any of it." "No," the innkeeper said. "Someone should see it," he said. "Someone should be there to see it." The innkeeper looked at him steadily. "Then perhaps that is the answer to your question, about what to put in the gap." He went upstairs eventually. He slept deeply, the sleep of someone who has spent years in a building that moves very slightly in storms, and whose body has learned to rest inside movement, inside uncertainty, inside the knowledge that the sea is there and is not entirely tamed. In the morning he came downstairs, and the innkeeper was at the fire, and there was bread, and there was on the table a small book, a notebook, hardbound, with a good pen clipped to the cover. He sat down and picked it up. He looked at the blank first page for a moment. 39 years, the innkeeper said. "You should write it down. All of it. The phosphorescence, the green flash, the sea before the storm, the things the machine won't see." He looked at her. He had never thought of himself as someone who wrote anything other than logs. "A log is a kind of writing," she said, as if she had heard him. He left later that morning. He did not go to the city exactly. He went back toward the coast. Not to Carrow Head, there was nothing for him at Carrow Head anymore, but to the coast, to find a place where he could sit above the sea and write down what he had seen. 39 years of the sea seeing itself through the eyes of one careful man. The machine would keep the light. He would keep the record. It was, he had decided, not such a different thing. The innkeeper watched him go. She stood at the window for a moment and watched him take the coast road, the one that ran between the inn and the sea, the road that smelled of salt even in dry weather. She picked up his empty bowl. She thought about the phosphorescence, the green flash, the 40-foot waves. 39 years of the sea witnessed by one pair of careful eyes. She thought there were worse things a life could be made of. The door opened. He was old, very old, older than Thomas, older than the night, older than anyone who had come through that door in some time. He was thin in the way of the very old, and he moved slowly, and he wore a coat that had once been good and was now simply old in the way that he was old. He carried a leather bag, old also, full, you could see from the way it pulled at his shoulder, of papers. He made it to the chair and sat down with the careful deliberateness of someone who knows that sitting down is not as simple as it once was. He set the bag on the floor by his feet. He looked at the fire. He looked at the innkeeper. "I am a mathematician," he said. "My name is Professor Aldous Crane. I've been working on the same problem for 47 years. I am 91 years old. I believe..." He paused. His voice was steady but very tired. "I believe I may be dying, and I have not solved it." The innkeeper set something warm in front of him and sat down across from him with the full attention she gave to everyone. "Tell me about the problem," she said. Professor Aldous Crane had been born in a small house in a provincial city to a mother who kept meticulous accounts and a father who repaired clocks. Both of these things had shaped him in ways he had spent decades identifying. The meticulous accounts had given him precision. The clocks had given him a fascination with the hidden mechanisms of things, the way the visible behavior of a clock was governed by an invisible structure of springs and gears and escapements. He had understood, even as a small boy watching his father work, that the world had two layers: the surface, which behaved in ways you could observe, and the deeper structure, which explained why. He had gone to university at 16. He had known by 18 that he would be a mathematician. He had known by 23 that his life's work would be a particular problem, a conjecture that had been open for 230 years, which concerned prime numbers and their distribution, and which, if solved, would reorganize an entire region of mathematics the way a key reorganizes a locked room. He had told very few people this, not because he was secretive, but because when he told people, they tended to say things like, "What use is it?" And the answer, that beauty is its own use, that understanding the deep structure of numbers is worth doing, the way a cathedral is worth building, for reasons that transcend immediate practicality, was very difficult to say quickly, and most people did not have the patience for the longer version. "The problem," he said to the innkeeper, eating slowly because eating had become slow,
All his body's processes had become slow, which was itself a kind of data, a kind of information about where he was in the progression of things. The problem is not that I have been unable to solve it. It is that I do not know whether it is solvable. There are theorems that resist all proof and all disproof for generations, and then fall to the right approach. And there are theorems that resist because they are, in some fundamental sense, beyond the reach of the tools we currently have. I do not know which kind this is. "Does it matter which kind?" the innkeeper asked. He looked at her. It was a question that struck at something he had been circling for decades. "It matters to the record," he said. "If it is unsolvable, then 47 years of effort were not wasted, because the work I produced in the process was not wasted. The methods I developed, the partial results, the students I trained who went on to other things, but the central aim, the thing I woke up every morning to do, that would have been, in the end, impossible. And there is a question I cannot resolve about whether that means I failed." The innkeeper poured him more of the warm drink. He wrapped his hands around the cup gratefully. His hands were cold always now, the circulation not what it was. "What do you think you were doing?" she asked. "For 47 years, what was the actual work?" He looked at her. It was a strange question. He knew what the work was. He could describe the mathematics in detail, but she did not mean that, he understood. She meant something underneath the mathematics. "I was trying to understand something," he said. "Something about the way the universe is ordered. Prime numbers are not random. They follow patterns, complex ones. Patterns that we can see but not fully explain. And that, the existence of deep pattern, the existence of order that we can feel but not yet fully articulate, that is, to me, one of the most profound facts about the nature of things. I was not trying to prove a theorem. I was trying to understand what the theorem, if proven, would tell us about the character of reality." He paused. He had never said this in quite these words before. His papers were precise and technical, and he had kept this feeling, this motivation, largely to himself, as something that might seem too grand, too presumptuous for the pages of mathematical journals. "And did you learn anything?" the innkeeper asked. He thought about that for a long time.
"Yes," he said at last. "I learned that the pattern is deeper than I thought. That what I can see of it, what any of us can see, is the merest surface of something that extends much further than our tools currently reach. I learned that the universe does not give up its structures easily. And I learned..." He stopped. "I learned that pursuing a thing with complete seriousness for a very long time, whether or not you reach the conclusion, is not nothing. The pursuit itself has weight. It has meaning." "Do you believe that?" the innkeeper asked quietly. "Or are you trying to?" It was such an honest question that he sat with it for a long time before answering. "Both," he said finally. "I believe it, and I am also trying to believe it more completely than I do. The belief keeps slipping. I pick it up and carry it, and then it slips, and I have to pick it up again." "That is what all beliefs do," the innkeeper said. "Even the true ones." especially the true ones, perhaps. He reached down and opened the leather bag. He took out a sheaf of papers, many pages closely written with diagrams and equations that filled every available space. He laid them on the table between himself and the innkeeper. He smoothed them with his hands in the way of someone who has handled a thing so many times it has become part of him. "This is 47 years, he said. All of it. Drafts and dead ends and the things that almost worked and the things that worked and then didn't. And the things I don't know whether they work because they lead to a place where my tools simply stop." The innkeeper looked at the pages, not with the polite look of someone being respectful about something they don't understand, with actual attention. "It's beautiful," she said. He looked at her sharply. It was not what he had expected her to say. "The structure of it," she said, "even without following the mathematics, the shape of it, the way it builds, you can see the mind at work." He had not thought of it that way. He thought of the papers as a record of a project that had so far not concluded. But she was looking at them as something else, as an object in themselves, as a thing that existed independent of its stated goal. "My students," he said, "over the years, some of them worked on parts of this, on related problems that branched off from the central question. 3 of them made significant contributions to other areas of mathematics using techniques they developed here in my seminar rooms, working on adjacent problems." He paused. "One of them, a woman named Vera, who was my student 40 years ago, she proved a major result last year, using a method she developed here in a room with me when we were working on an approach to my problem that ultimately failed." "Did she write to you?" the innkeeper asked. "She came," he said. His voice was different for a moment. "She came to see me. She is 60-something now. She was very young when she was my student. She came and sat in my rooms and she said, 'The thing I learned from you was not the mathematics. The thing I learned was how to fail well, how to be wrong without being destroyed by it, how to look at a dead end and find in it the seed of something else.'" He was quiet for a moment. "She said, 'That is the most useful thing I ever learned from anyone.'" The fire shifted. The inn was very quiet. "You taught her how to fail well," the innkeeper said. 47 years of careful, serious, committed failure. That is what you modeled for her. And she took it and proved a major result. And you still think you failed?" He looked at her, and something in him, something that had been held in a very specific posture for a very long time, the posture of a man carrying a weight he had not been able to put down, shifted. "The theorem," he said slowly, "I may have been thinking about it wrong. I may have been thinking of it as the point, the thing I was supposed to arrive at, when perhaps the theorem was—" He stopped. He was working something out. "When perhaps the theorem was more like a direction, something I oriented toward. And the work was not the approach toward the theorem, but everything I built while approaching it." "A lighthouse," the innkeeper said quietly. He looked at her, not understanding. "You navigate toward it," she said. "It keeps you on course. But the sailing, that is the actual experience. That is where the living happens." He sat with that for a long time. The fire, the warmth, the papers laid out on the table between them. He had not laid them out for someone else to look at before. He had always been protective of them, the way you are protective of things that carry the weight of your life's choices. But here they felt different.
They were not evidence of failure laid out for judgment. They were something that had been made, something that had taken shape over decades and existed now whether or not the theorem at its center was ever proved. "Do you know what I have never written down?" he said. "Tell me," the innkeeper said. "The moments when it was beautiful. The mathematics. There are moments in mathematics when you see a structure that is simply, there is no word but beautiful. When a proof turns in a way that is unexpected and elegant, and you feel for a moment that you have glimpsed something that was always there, waiting to be seen. I have published hundreds of pages, and I have never once written, 'And this is beautiful,' because that is not the language of mathematics journals. But it is the language of what actually happened," the innkeeper said. "Yes," he said, "it is exactly the language of what actually happened." She rose and went behind the bar and brought back something he hadn't seen before. A small bottle of something amber-colored and 2 small glasses. She poured one for him and one for herself. He raised an eyebrow. 47 years, she said simply. "It deserves something." He picked up his glass. He held it for a moment, and then he said something he had never said out loud before, something he had thought many times but kept contained as the serious man he had trained himself to be. It was beautiful. The pursuit of it was beautiful. The dead ends were beautiful in their way, the way of things that teach you precisely where not to go, which is itself a form of knowledge. The moments when the structure showed itself, those moments were among the most extraordinary of my life. I did not solve the theorem. I spent 47 years in its company. And it was not a waste. It was not a waste at all. He drank. The innkeeper drank. The fire settled. He gathered his papers carefully the way he always had. He put them back in the leather bag. He rose from the chair with the slow deliberateness of his age. "The room at the top of the stairs," the innkeeper said. He nodded. He picked up his bag. At the foot of the stairs, he stopped. "If someone proves it," he said, "after I'm gone, if someone proves it using something I contributed, will you know?" The innkeeper looked at him with the patient look she had. "I think so." "Good," he said. "I would like to know." He went upstairs. He slept, not the shallow, watchful sleep of recent years, but something deeper, something that felt, for the first time in a long time, like rest without apology. He did not leave in the morning. He stayed another day. He sat at the long table and he wrote, not mathematics this time. He wrote about the beautiful moments, the elegant turns, the glimpses of deep structure. He wrote it in plain language, without equations, in the voice of a man trying to tell someone who loved him what his life had actually felt like from the inside. He wrote for his students, for Vera, for the people who would come after him and pursue their own theorems, their own impossible, beautiful, unanswerable questions. He wanted them to know, the pursuit is enough. The seriousness with which you pursue it is enough. You do not have to arrive. You only have to go, with full attention, as far as you can. He left the following morning. The road he took was not long, he was not going far, but he walked it with the pace of a man who has, finally, set down a weight. Not because the weight didn't matter, but because he has understood that he has been carrying it all wrong, that it was never a burden, it was the thing itself.
The innkeeper cleared the professor's glass. She refilled the small bottle and put it back behind the bar. She thought about beautiful mathematics. She thought about Vera and the method developed in a room during a long series of carefully managed failures. She thought about the quality of light when a proof turns in an unexpected direction. She had seen many things in this inn, many kinds of journey, many kinds of tired. She had learned over more years than she tracked that the heaviest loads
were usually the ones people carried without knowing they were carrying them. She heard it before the door opened, small footsteps on the path outside, hesitant ones. And then the door opened, not with the firm push of an adult who has come to the end of a long day, but with the more tentative push of someone not quite sure of their welcome. He was perhaps 9 years old, perhaps 10. He was wearing clothes that were wrong for him, not wrong in size, but wrong in kind, as if they belonged to a different story than the one he was supposed to be in. A rough-spun tunic and heavy boots, when he looked like a child who ought to be in ordinary clothes, school clothes, play clothes. He stood just inside the door and looked around the inn with eyes that had seen things a child his age should not have seen. He had the careful, watchful look of someone who has learned to read environments quickly. Then he saw the fire, and something in his face that had been held very tightly in the way that frightened children hold themselves, let go, just slightly. "Hello," said the innkeeper very gently. "Are you hungry?" He nodded. "Come and sit by the fire," she said. "I'll find you something." His name was William, and he was 10 years old. And 3 weeks ago, though his sense of time had become unreliable since then, he had gone to bed in his own bedroom in a house on an ordinary street in an ordinary city. And he had woken up somewhere else entirely. He had been reading the night it happened. He read constantly. He was the kind of child for whom books were not quite separate from reality, for whom the boundary between the world of a story and the world outside the book was always somewhat porous. His mother called it a gift. His teachers called it distractibility. William thought of it simply as the way things are. He had been reading a story, a dark one, not one his mother had given him, one he had found at the back of a shelf at the school library with a faded cover and no author name he recognized. A story about a forest that went on forever and a village at its edge and various things that came out of the forest at night. He had read until very late. He had fallen asleep with the book on his chest. And when he had woken up, he was in the forest. Not his forest, not a city park, not the woods at the edge of the estate where he sometimes played. The forest from the story. He had known immediately because of the quality of the light, the way it came through the trees at a low angle that did not correspond to any time of day he recognized. And the silence, which was the thick, listening silence of a forest that was aware of you rather than merely indifferent. He had been frightened. Of course he had been frightened. He was 10 years old and he had woken up in the wrong world. He had looked for the book. It was not there. He had looked for his bedroom. It was not there. He had been very still for a moment, and then he had done what he had read that you should do in exactly this kind of situation. He had started walking. The things from the story had come eventually. Not all at once. That would have been better in a way, because you could face all at once. They came one at a time over several days. The shadow that followed him between the trees, always just out of sight. The voice in the well at the edge of a clearing that asked him questions he didn't know the answers to. The old woman at the crossroads who offered him something in a pot that smelled wonderful, and he had been hungry enough to almost take it before he remembered what the book had said about things offered at crossroads. He had discovered, rather good at surviving in a story that was trying to be frightening. He had read enough of them to know the grammar, the things you accepted and the things you refused, the rules that governed this kind of world. He was still frightened, but the fear was manageable, because he had a map, even if it was an internal one. "But I want to go home," he said to the innkeeper. He had been eating steadily while he talked. She had brought him an extraordinary amount of food, and he had eaten all of it in the focused way of a genuinely hungry child. "Not because this isn't... It's interesting. Parts of it have been very interesting. But my mother will be worried.
She worries a lot, even when things are ordinary, and things are not ordinary right now. No, the innkeeper agreed. They are not. I kept the book, he said, the one I fell asleep reading. He reached into the pocket of the wrong clothes and brought out a small book, faded cover, no author name. I thought it might be important. It might be like a door. If I went in through a book, I might be able to come out through one. He set it on the table. The innkeeper looked at it. She looked at it with the careful, respectful attention she gave to all things. That was very good thinking, she said. My mother says I think too much, he said. In school they say I'm not paying attention, but actually I am paying very close attention, just not to what they think I'm paying attention to. I'm paying attention to the other things. The other things, the innkeeper repeated. What kind of things? The patterns, he said. The way things work underneath, the grammar of things. He waved his hand in a gesture that encompassed the world. Stories have grammar. You can learn it if you pay attention. Real life has grammar too, but it's harder to read because it's not on paper. The innkeeper studied him. He was a remarkable child, not in the polished way of a child trained to be remarkable, but in the raw way of a mind that had simply come into the world already alert to its depths. Tell me about the grammar of this story, she said, the one you're in. He thought about it, which she appreciated. He did not answer immediately. He organized the thought first. It's a dark story, he said. Not a horror story. It doesn't want to actually hurt me, I think. It wants to test me. There's a difference. Horror stories want to break you. Test stories want to see what you're made of. This is a test story. The things in it, the shadow, the voice in the well, the woman at the crossroads, they're tests. Questions dressed up as threats. And you've been answering the questions correctly? Mostly, he said. I got one wrong, the well. I answered the question from the well honestly, and I think that was the wrong move. I think the right move was to refuse to answer at all. The well asked me what I was most afraid of, and I told it, because I thought honesty was the right answer. And after that, the shadows got thicker. For a day or two. He paused. I think that particular question was a trap. What are you most afraid of? The innkeeper asked. He looked at her. He was deciding whether this question from this person was also a trap. I'll tell you, he said at last, because you're not in the story, you're outside it. This place is outside it. I knew that as soon as I came through the door. There's a different quality to the air. He looked at her steadily. I'm most afraid of my mother thinking I chose to leave. I'm most afraid that she thinks I was unhappy and I ran away. Because I wasn't. I'm not unhappy. I like my life. I like my room and my books and my mother's cooking, even though she overcooks the vegetables, and my school, even though the grammar of it is hard to read. I didn't choose to be here. I want her to know that. The innkeeper said nothing for a moment. The fire was the only sound. She knows, the innkeeper said, not as a comfort, as a fact, with the quiet authority she brought to facts. He looked at her. How? Because she knows you, the innkeeper said. The people who know us understand us even through their fear. She is frightened, yes, but underneath the fear, she knows you did not choose to leave. He absorbed this. He was not a child who accepted comfort easily. He was too attentive to the grammar of things to accept comfort that wasn't structurally sound. But this felt structurally sound. It felt true. Can you help me get back? He asked. That is what you're here for, the innkeeper said. Yes. She picked up the book. She turned it over in her hands. She looked at the spine, the faded cover, the pages that were worn in the way of a book that had been read many times before William found it. "Books that take you in," she said, "can take you out. But not randomly. You have to know how. The same way you learn the grammar of the story, you need the grammar of the exit." "What is it?" he asked. He was leaning forward, fully attentive in the way that he was usually told was inattention, because it didn't look like what his teachers expected attentiveness to look like. "In stories of this kind," the innkeeper said, "you leave the way you came, but not the physical way, not by retracing your steps, by completing what the story needed from you. The story took you because you were the right reader for it. It needed someone who could read it properly, who could receive what it had to offer, who could sit with it seriously." He thought about this. What did it have to offer? "What do you think?" she asked. He was quiet for a long time, a long, genuine thinking time. She let him have it. "The grammar," he said at last. "The grammar of fear. The difference between threats and tests. The knowledge that things that seem frightening often have rules, and that the rules can be learned." He paused. "The knowledge that I can navigate something difficult and not be broken by it." He looked up. "I can do that," he said. "I wasn't sure before. Now I am." The innkeeper went behind the bar and came back with something he had not seen before. A small glass bottle, the kind that might hold ink or a very small quantity of something precious. Inside it, a light, not a flame, nothing burning, but a steady, cool, blue-white glow that pulsed slightly, like breathing. She set it on the table between them. "What is that?" he asked. "The way out," she said. "When you're ready, you take the book, you open it to the first page, you hold this and you read, not for the story, not for what happens, but for the grammar. You read it the way you've been reading everything since you got here, for the deep structure. And the deep structure of a story that has given you what it had to give, that structure is an exit. The pattern of it leads back." He looked at the bottle. He looked at the book. "Will it work?" he asked, not plaintively, analytically. "I believe so," she said. "I have not sent a child back through a book before, but the principle is sound." "You have sent adults back," he said. "I have helped people find their way back to where they came from," she said carefully, "in various ways. This is one of the ways." He picked up the bottle. The light inside it was warm in his hand, despite looking cold. He held it and looked at it for a moment, the scientist in him, even at 10, cataloguing, trying to understand. "Not tonight," she said. "Tonight you sleep. You eat more in the morning, and when you are ready, not in a hurry, when you are genuinely ready, you open the book." He went upstairs. He had the book in one hand and the bottle in the other. The room at the top of the stairs was the right size for a child, not small, but proportioned correctly, with a bed that had a considerable number of blankets and a window that was at exactly the right height for a boy of 10 to look out of without standing on anything. He set the bottle on the windowsill. He set the book on the bed. He looked out the window at the night. There were stars, more than he had ever seen in the city. He pressed his face against the glass and looked at them. He thought about his mother, and he let himself miss her fully, without trying to manage it, the way the innkeeper's presence had somehow made it possible to feel things without being managed by them. He slept without dreaming. For the first time in 3 weeks, he slept without dreaming. In the morning, he ate everything the innkeeper put in front of him, an impressive quantity, and then he sat at the table with the book and the bottle, and the innkeeper across from him. "Tell me when," she said. He opened the book to the first page. He picked up the bottle. It was warm again in his hand, warmer than before. He read,
Not the words exactly, or not only the words, the grammar beneath them, the deep structure, the pattern that the story had been built on, that all stories like it were built on. The journey into darkness, the tests, the knowledge earned, the return. The return. There was always a return in stories like this. The return was the whole point. He followed the pattern inward, and then, the way a knot loosens when you find the right thread, he followed it back out. The innkeeper watched the chair. She watched it for a long moment, then she nodded once, a small, satisfied nod, and took the book from where it had fallen open on the table. She set it gently on the small shelf by the window. Some things stayed when their people left. She thought this one was a stayer. Somewhere far from the inn, in a house on an ordinary street, a boy woke up on his bedroom floor with a book on his chest and no clear memory of how he had come to be lying on the floor, or how much time had passed, or why he felt, despite being confused and slightly stiff, as if he had come through something and was better for it. His mother was asleep in the next room. He could hear her breathing. He lay still for a moment and listened. Then he got up, very quietly, and went and stood in the doorway of her room. He did not wake her. He just stood there for a moment, looking, listening to her breathe. Then he went back to bed, and he fell asleep, and this time he dreamed of stars.
The innkeeper picked up the small glass bottle from the table. The light inside it had gone. It was just glass now. She held it up to the fire. In the firelight, the glass was beautiful, the way all things are beautiful when the light comes through them at the right angle. She set it back on the shelf. She thought about the boy and the book and the deep grammar of stories that take you somewhere and bring you back changed. She thought that the best stories were precisely the ones that did that, the ones from which you emerged, slightly stunned, into a world that looked the same as it had before, but which you could now see a little more clearly. The door opened. He came in without ceremony, which was itself remarkable. He was a tall man, broad, in his late 60s perhaps, wearing plain traveling clothes that were well-made but unadorned. He had a good face, the face of someone who had spent decades being looked at and had learned to hold it in a particular way, carefully, without expression. He was trying to wear that face now. It wasn't quite working. He sat down before she offered the chair. She noted this. He was a man accustomed to sitting wherever he chose. Then he seemed to notice what he had done and looked slightly embarrassed. "Forgive me," he said. "Old habit." "Nothing to forgive," she said. "What would you like?" "Anything," he said. "Anything simple. I have been eating elaborate food for 40 years and I am very tired of elaborate food." She brought him bread and butter and a bowl of something with no elaboration whatsoever. He looked at it with an expression of genuine relief. "I was a king," he said. He said it the way you say something you are still getting used to having said in the past tense. "Until 3 months ago." His name was Edmund. Not the Edmund that Clara had been going to marry, a different Edmund, a king named Edmund, which he had found somewhat absurd his entire life, his name being an ordinary name that he had always felt slightly embarrassed by at formal occasions. He had been king for 26 years. He had become king at 41 when his father died, which is late enough in life that you have formed a clear idea of who you are before the position imposes its own idea on top of yours. He had considered this a blessing, mostly. He had also considered it a difficulty, because the person he had been before kingship was someone with his own views and his own preferences and his own particular way of standing in a room, all of which became complicated once the room had a throne in it. "I always intended to abdicate," he said to the innkeeper, eating the bread slowly and with obvious pleasure. I always knew I would. Not that there was an obvious moment, but I had decided when I became king that I would not be king when I was old, that I would give it to my daughter while I still had the energy and the sense to do it properly, while I could still stand up and say, "Here, this is how it works. These are the people you should trust and the ones you should watch carefully. This is what the job actually requires, as opposed to what everyone says it requires." "And did you do it properly?" the innkeeper asked. "I think so," he said. "She was ready. She's more capable than I was at her age. She has better judgment, and she listens better, and she has considerably more patience, which is the thing I always lacked. I would get restless. In long meetings, in the 12th hour of a diplomatic negotiation, I would start making decisions just to have them made. And she never does that. She sits with things." He smiled. It was a complicated smile, pride and loss mixed in the way that love for your children's competence is always mixed with the awareness that their competence is making you unnecessary. "So I handed it over," he said. "There was a ceremony, much more elaborate than I wanted. I wanted something quiet, but apparently the kingdom requires ceremony for this kind of thing, and she was right to insist on it. And then I walked out of the palace in ordinary clothes for the first time in 26 years, and I didn't know what to do." He looked at the fire. He ate some more bread. "I have been walking," he said, "for 3 months. I go through villages and towns, and no one recognizes me. Or if they do, they assume they're wrong, because why would the king be walking alone through the market square? So they go on with what they're doing, and He stopped. "I have been watching." "What have you been watching?" the innkeeper asked. "Ordinary life," he said. "I have been watching ordinary life, which I have administered for 26 years without actually seeing." He paused. That sounds more dramatic than I mean it. I knew about ordinary life. I had advisors, reports. I made decisions that affected ordinary life every day. But I had not watched a market woman count out change and put it carefully in her pocket. I had not watched children playing in the street in the way of children who have no particular supervision and have invented their own elaborate game with its own rules that they take extremely seriously. I had not eaten at an ordinary table with ordinary food, he gestured at the bowl, like this. "And?" the innkeeper asked. "And I keep thinking that I missed something important," he said, "for 26 years. I kept the country safe. I think I kept it safe, I won't overclaim. I made reasonable decisions and had reasonable advisors and tried to be fair. But there is something in watching a market woman count change that..." He stopped again. "It is so specific. It is so concrete. She counts each coin. She knows the value of each one. And I spent 26 years dealing in very large abstractions, the economy, the harvest, the army. And now I am watching one woman and her coins, and I am thinking, that is the real thing. That is what all the abstraction was supposed to serve." "Do you think you served it well?" the innkeeper asked. "The real thing?" He considered this with the seriousness he brought to genuine questions, as opposed to political questions, which had their own different kind of seriousness. "Sometimes," he said, "there were years, the early years, and some difficult years later, when I made decisions I believe were genuinely the right ones. Decisions that cost something in the short term and worked in the long term. Those I can defend. And there were also years, several of them, when I was simply managing, going through the motions with reasonable competence, not making the situation worse, but not improving it either. Those years I am less certain about." "Is that a failure?" the innkeeper asked. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I think it depends on what you believe the job is.
If the job is to be inspired and inspiring every year for 26 years, then I failed for stretches of it. If the job is to maintain a reasonable stability within which people can live their lives with some predictability, then perhaps those years of managing were not failures exactly, just maintenance. He drank from his cup. The woman in the market, he said. Her life, in broad terms, was stable when I became king and stable when I left. She could count her coins. The market was there. The currency meant something. The roads that brought the goods to the market were in reasonable repair. Those things, those are not nothing. They are not the poem of governance, but they are the prose. And without the prose, the poem has nothing to stand on. The innkeeper looked at him with the expression she had, the patient, observing one, the one that saw more than it stated. "What are you afraid of?" she asked. He looked at her. He had been asked this question many times in his life, by advisors, by his wife, by his daughter, and had always answered it diplomatically or strategically. The question in a political context always had a subtext, and he had always answered the subtext. Here, there was no subtext. "Being nothing," he said. "Not nothing in the moral sense. I've lived long enough not to be afraid of dying with a clear conscience, but being irrelevant, invisible. I walked through a village last week, and a group of children ran past me, and I stepped aside to let them pass, and not one of them looked at me. They just ran past. And I thought, that's right, that's correct. I'm just a man on a road. And also I thought, oh, so this is what it feels like." "What does it feel like?" she asked. "Strange," he said. "Lighter than I expected, and lonelier than I expected, both at once." He paused. "I have been looked at my entire adult life, watched, attended to. Even in private, there was always someone nearby. Advisors, guards, staff. I was never, in 26 years, entirely unobserved. And now? Now I walk through villages and no one looks at me. And I am discovering, slowly, because I am apparently not quick about this, that there is something liberating about it. That being unobserved means you can observe without performing. You can just look. You can just be in a place and see what is there without it being a royal visit. "What have you seen?" the innkeeper asked, "that you couldn't see before?" He thought about it. "Faces," he said simply. "I have seen faces. In 26 years of being king, people's faces when they looked at me were managed. They were showing me what they wanted me to see, or what they thought I wanted to see, or what they were afraid of me seeing. Every face was performing. And now? Now I see faces that are just being faces. Tired at the end of the day, pleased about something small, worried about something specific and real. The market woman counting her coins had a face that was entirely unguarded, and I stood there and looked at it and thought, I don't think I have ever seen a face like that before. Just a face with nothing to prove. He ate more of the bread. He was quiet for a while. The fire was steady and the inn was warm, and he had the feeling, unusual for him who had spent most of his adult life planning his next thing while the current thing was still happening, the feeling of simply being in the moment he was in. My wife died 7 years ago, he said, before the abdication. She wanted me to abdicate sooner. She said I had done what needed doing and I should let it go. I kept saying, 1 more year, 1 more thing to resolve. And then she was gone, and it was too late for her to see it. The innkeeper did not respond to this immediately. She let the words settle the way they needed to. She would have liked this, he said, walking through villages anonymously. She was never comfortable with being watched. She bore it, she was good at it, but she never liked it. She liked small things. She liked our garden, which we never had enough time for. She liked very long letters and very short conversations. He smiled, the complicated smile again. I am walking partly for her, he said, seeing the faces she didn't get to see, the ordinary, unguarded faces, thinking, she would have liked that one. She would have laughed at that. Does it help? The innkeeper asked. Walking for someone else? Yes, he said. It gives it a shape. It gives me a direction. Not literally, I don't have a destination, not really, but a purpose that fits inside the lack of destination. He paused. She would have been very amused by the irony, by the way. A king wandering around with no plans, no agenda, no country to govern. She always said I would not know what to do with freedom. She was right, but I am learning. What are you learning? The innkeeper asked. That ordinary life is not lesser, he said. I think perhaps I always understood this intellectually and spent 26 years trying to protect ordinary life, but there was a part of me that found it smaller, simpler, that found the problems of governance larger and more important than the problems of the market woman with her coins. And now I am not sure that's true. I am not sure scale is the same as significance. He went to bed eventually, the room at the top of the stairs like all of them, and he slept the sleep of someone who has been walking for 3 months and whose body is very grateful for a real bed. He was the one guest who came down in the night. The innkeeper heard his footsteps and was not surprised. He sat in the chair by the fire and he looked at the embers, and she sat across from him, and neither of them said anything for a long time. I keep thinking about things I would do differently, he said. Not with anguish, with the even tone of a man cataloguing. Not the big decisions. The big decisions I've made peace with mostly. The small ones. The times I was impatient in a meeting where patience was called for. The times I dismissed someone's concern because it seemed minor, and they were right that it wasn't minor. It was just small. The times I chose efficiency over understanding. You have a daughter, the innkeeper said, who does not make those errors. Who makes different ones, he said. That's how it goes. Each generation fails in new ways. He paused. But she is very good. She is genuinely very good. Then your legacy is walking around making decisions, the innkeeper said. He looked at her, and something in that, the plainness of it, the sufficiency of it, settled something in him that had been unsettled for 3 months. In the morning he ate well, and he sat for a while, and then he rose and put on his coat, and he went to the door. He stopped. He turned back. Do you know what I have decided? He said. Tell me, she said. I am going to find a village, he said. A specific one, not one I have been through, a new one. And I am going to stay for a while. I am going to learn everyone's names. I am going to sit in the market and watch the faces. I am going to be nobody, for as long as that is what I need to be. And perhaps eventually, I will be someone. Not a king, just a person. But I will take my time about it. That sounds right, the innkeeper said. He nodded. He pushed through the door. Outside, the road went in a direction he hadn't expected, and that seemed exactly correct.
The innkeeper cleared the table. She thought about the king walking through a village in ordinary clothes, watching faces. She thought about his wife and the garden they hadn't had enough time for. She thought about legacy, the various forms it takes, the ones we plan for and the ones we stumble into. She put more wood on the fire, not because it needed it. The fire in this inn was always exactly right, but because the next guest would be cold. She knew this the way she knew all the things about people before they arrived. Not by magic, exactly, by long attention, by the accumulated knowledge of a great many people at the ends of their roads. The door opened slowly, more slowly than usual, not because whoever was on the other side was hesitant, but because they were careful, moving carefully, deliberately, the way you move when you have learned that the world requires more care from you than it used to. She was very old. Not as old as the professor, but old in a different way. Not the old of someone who has worn out their body in pursuit of something, but the old of someone who has simply been here a very long time, witnessing. She wore good clothes, plain but well-made. Her white hair was pinned up. She carried a small bag. She moved into the inn with a kind of careful dignity, not slow because she was weak, but slow because she had learned there was no need for hurry. She sat down. She looked at the fire for a long time. Then she looked at the innkeeper. "I have been coming here for 30 years, she said, in my mind, thinking of a place like this. I wasn't sure it was real." She looked around the room. "Here it is." "Here it is," the innkeeper agreed. She set something warm on the table. "My name is Eleanor," the old woman said. "I am 87 years old. I am the last one left." She meant the last one left who remembered the world as it had been. Not the whole world, she was not so grand as to claim that, but her world. The specific, irreplaceable world of one woman's life, the people in it, the things they had known and done and said and been. The texture of a particular time, a particular place, a particular way of being alive in the world that no longer existed except in her. Her husband George had died 15 years ago. Her daughter Miriam 12 years ago, too young. That had been too young. She still had not fully reconciled herself to that. Her son Robert had moved far away when he was young and had come back eventually, but he was in a care home now. His mind was not his mind anymore. He was there, but the Robert she had known was already gone. Her friends from youth, her friends from middle age, her friends from her early old age, gone, one by one, with the particular loneliness of outliving people that you do not understand until you are doing it. "It accumulates," she said to the innkeeper. "That is the thing no one tells you. You know, in the abstract that people die, but the accumulation, the way each one takes something with them. George took 30 years. He took our first apartment, and the smell of it, and the sound of the street below our window. He took the way we argued, the specific grammar of our particular disagreements, the things we were always disagreeing about, the way we always resolved them. He took the version of me that existed alongside him." She paused. She drank from her cup. "And then Miriam took so much. She took all her own things, obviously, but she also took things she had of mine. Memories that only she remembered with me. Holidays we had taken when she was small,
a particular day at the seaside when she was 7 that she had reminded me of every few years, and now there is no one to remind me of it, and I'm afraid I will lose it." The innkeeper looked at her steadily. "Tell me about it," she said. "The day at the seaside." Eleanor looked at her, and the thing that happened to Eleanor's face when she heard that invitation, the relief of it, the enormous, specific relief of being asked, was one of the things the innkeeper had seen many times and which never became ordinary. "She was 7, Eleanor said. "We went to the coast, not a fancy place, a very ordinary seaside, with a promenade and a few stalls selling sweets and postcards. She had a red coat. I can see it very precisely, a red wool coat with large buttons, and she had grown since we bought it, so the sleeves were slightly short. She kept pulling them down, and I kept telling her to leave them." She smiled, a very particular smile, the smile of someone revisiting a specific, well-loved place. "She found a starfish," Eleanor said, "in a tidal pool. A perfect one, the right number of arms, the right color, the right texture. She held it very carefully in both hands, and she looked at it for a long time, and then she put it back exactly where she had found it. I asked her why she was putting it back. She said, 'Because it lives here.' And then she said, very seriously, the way 7-year-olds are sometimes very serious, 'I think it's important that things live where they belong.'" Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "She was 7, she said, and she said that. 'I think it's important that things live where they belong.' I've thought about that many times over the years. I still don't know exactly what she meant by it, but it has stayed with me. It is one of the things she left me." The innkeeper said nothing. She let Eleanor have the full space of the memory. "I am afraid," Eleanor said, "not of dying. That is not what frightens me. I am afraid of what dies with me. Not my own things, my own particular grief, my own particular story. Those are mine to take, and I don't begrudge that. But the things I hold for others. The day at the seaside. George's laugh, the specific sound of it, which no one else remembers now. The way the light fell in our first apartment in the mornings, the things that are only alive as long as I am alive to remember them." "Those things," the innkeeper said slowly, "do you believe they cease to exist when you stop remembering them?" Eleanor considered this carefully. She was not a careless woman. She had spent 87 years taking things seriously, and this question deserved that. "I don't know," she said. "I want to say no. I want to believe that the day at the seaside happened, and continues to have happened, regardless of who is here to remember it. That the fact of it is woven into the fabric of things. That it is real and permanent in some way that outlasts memory." "But," the innkeeper said, hearing the but. "But I am not sure I believe it," Eleanor said. "When I try to hold on to it, when I actually think about George's laugh, about Miriam's red coat, about the starfish in the tidal pool, I feel how fragile it is, how much it depends on me. And I am very old, and I am very tired, and the thought of being the last one." She stopped. Not from grief, she had moved through grief, from something more complex than grief, from the specific weight of being the last custodian of things that were not yours, but had been entrusted to you by circumstance. "Let me tell you something," the innkeeper said. She folded her hands on the table. She had the look of someone about to say something they have known for a very long time and have been waiting for the right person to say it to. "The things you carry," she said, "the day at the seaside, George's laugh, the apartment in the morning, these are not diminished by being held in one memory rather than many. They are not diluted by being held by you alone. They are fully themselves. Miriam's thought about the starfish, that it was important that things live where they belong. That thought was thought. It was real. It happened. The fact that she is gone, and you were the last one who heard it, does not undo its having been thought. Eleanor listened. And you, the innkeeper said, are not merely a storage vessel for these things. You are not simply holding them until you die and then they vanish. You have been living them, carrying them the way the thing they are, not as data to be preserved, but as part of the shape of who you have become. George's laugh is in you. Miriam's red coat is in you, not as a collection of facts, but as the texture of you, the way you see things, the way you move through the world. Eleanor sat with this. She turned her cup slowly. "And when I go?" she asked, not combatively, genuinely. "When you go," the innkeeper said, "the texture of you will have been real. The weight of you will have been real. And the people who have known you, your grandchildren, the people you have touched, they will carry the texture of you, without quite knowing what they are carrying. The way you carry Miriam, without always knowing you are carrying her." Eleanor was quiet for a long time. "That is a different kind of permanence," she said at last. "Yes," the innkeeper said. "It is not the kind that lets you look it up or point to it, but it is the kind that is actually true." Eleanor ate. She ate slowly and with the appreciation of someone who has reached the age where each meal is its own thing. Not fuel, not routine, but an event. The innkeeper had brought her things that were exactly right. Nothing she couldn't manage, nothing that required effort she didn't have, but nothing insufficient either. "George used to say," Eleanor said, "that the best thing about getting very old is that you stop worrying about the wrong things. You get very clear about what matters. The problem is, you're also very tired by the time you get that clear." The innkeeper smiled. It was a genuine smile. "He sounds like he was worth knowing," she said. "He was extraordinary," Eleanor said, "in a completely ordinary way, which is the best kind of extraordinary." She talked about George for a long time. Not performing grief. She had done her grieving, 15 years of it. But talking with the ease of someone in conversation with someone who has the time and attention for it. Talking the way she had not talked about him in years, because the people who had known him were mostly gone. And talking about someone to people who didn't know them requires so much background, so much building of context, that the actual person gets lost in the scaffolding. Here, she did not need to build the scaffolding. The innkeeper listened as if she already knew the context, as if George were present in the conversation by virtue of Eleanor making him present. She told the innkeeper about the first time she met him, a rainy afternoon at a friend's house, a gathering she had not wanted to attend, a man in the corner who was reading a book at what she had considered an antisocial moment, and who had looked up when she walked past and said, without preamble, "Have you read this?" The book was a collection of letters by a naturalist. She had not read it. He had lent it to her that day. She had read it and returned it a week later with considerable notes in the margins, and he had returned those margins to her with responses to her notes, and they had been corresponding ever since. "In the margins," the innkeeper said, with something in her voice that was very close to delight. "In the margins," Eleanor confirmed, "of whatever we happened to be reading. We annotated our entire lives together. I have boxes of books with our conversation in the margins. My grandchildren don't know what to do with them. I've told them, keep them.
Don't read them if you don't want to, but keep them. The conversation happened, and the books are its record. She talked about Miriam, carefully, with the care of someone who has learned how to hold grief so that it doesn't prevent other things, but is also not denied. She talked about Miriam as a baby, and as a child with a red coat, and as a teenager who was difficult in the way that teenagers are, who take things seriously, and as a young woman, and as a mother, and as a person in her own right, entirely separate from being Eleanor's daughter, with her own interior life that Eleanor had glimpsed, but never fully known. That is the thing about your children, she said. You love them completely, and you know them partially. The complete love and the partial knowledge sit alongside each other your whole life. You want to know everything, and you understand that you can't, and you love them anyway through the not knowing. She paused. I think that is also how you love anyone, she said. Any person. You love them through the partial knowledge. The complete ones would be, I don't know. Perhaps they would be boring. Perhaps the gap is where the love lives. The innkeeper looked at her with the full attention she gave to things that were said that deserved remembering. That, she said, is worth knowing. Eleanor looked at her. I am 87. I have had a great deal of time to arrive at it. Even so, the innkeeper said. Much later, after more food, after more fire, after the kind of conversation that unfolds slowly and without urgency, the way conversations between people with nothing to prove tend to unfold, Eleanor said, I think I would like to go upstairs now. Of course, the innkeeper said. She stood. She was careful about it. The standing, the gathering of herself, the small adjustments that 87 years require. She picked up her bag. I am very tired, she said. Not as a complaint, as a simple, true thing. I know, the innkeeper said. The good kind of tired, Eleanor said. The kind where you have done enough. Not the kind where you are worn out. The kind where you are finished. In the right way. In the way that things finish when they have been properly completed. The innkeeper looked at her with the look she had, the one that saw what was there and did not look away from it. Yes, she said. The good kind. Eleanor went upstairs. The room was warm. The bed was exactly right. The window faced west, and through it the sky was the color of old roses. Not pink, not orange, something between the two, something that does not have a common name because it only exists for a few minutes on certain evenings, and you have to be paying attention to catch it. Eleanor was paying attention. She sat on the edge of the bed, and she looked at the sky, and she held everything she had been carrying. Not to put it down. She was not going to put it down. That was not the nature of the kind of carrying she did. She held it consciously. George's laugh, Miriam's red coat, the starfish in the tidal pool, the marginalia, the rainy afternoon when she had walked past a man reading a book at an antisocial moment. She held all of it. She held herself holding it. She thought, I was here. I was here, and I paid attention, and I loved people with the full capacity I had for love, which was considerable. And I was loved back in the imperfect ways that people love each other, which is the only way love exists. And I kept the things that were entrusted to me. And the day at the seaside was real.
George's laugh was real. The way the light fell in the apartment in the mornings was real. It happened. It was woven in. The innkeeper had said, "It is not the kind of permanence you can point to." But you could point to me, Eleanor thought. I am the pointing. I am the evidence that those things occurred. And after me, the texture. The grandchildren who have something in the way they look at the sea that is Miriam's thought about the starfish without knowing it. The books with the marginalia. The way love passes through people into other people without anyone quite tracking the route. She lay down. The blanket was warm. She thought about George, not the late George, the ill George, the going away George, the early one, the one in the corner with the book at the party he shouldn't have been reading at, the one who had looked up and said, without preamble, "Have you read this?" As if they were already in the middle of a conversation, as if the conversation had been going on for some time and he was simply picking it up where it had last paused. She closed her eyes. The conversation, she thought, had been going on for some time. And it was not, she was fairly certain, done. In the morning, the innkeeper came upstairs with a tray. She knocked very gently and waited. The room was quiet and warm, and the window faced west, and the morning light came in at an angle that made everything in the room luminous, the way morning light makes things luminous in rooms that face west. Eleanor was at rest. She had the expression of someone who has, in the fullest sense, arrived. The innkeeper set the tray down. She stood in the room for a moment. She thought about the marginalia. She thought about the red coat. She thought about a 7-year-old girl at a tidal pool, holding a starfish in both hands, replacing it exactly where she had found it, saying, "I think it's important that things live where they belong." "Yes," the innkeeper said quietly to the room. "Yes, it is." She went back downstairs. She put more wood on the fire. She cleared the table. Outside, the road continued. It always continued. There was always someone further along it, making their way to the end of what they had been doing, looking for a fire and a table and someone who would listen. The door would open again soon. The innkeeper sat by the fire for a while after Eleanor. She sat very still, stiller than usual, which was already still. She thought about 87 years. She thought about love held through partial knowledge. She thought about the texture of a life passing through other lives without anyone tracking the route. These were the things she returned to after certain guests. The things she turned over and looked at from different angles, the way you turn a stone to see what is underneath. She had been doing this for longer than she was inclined to measure, and the thinking still surprised her. People still arrived with things she had not seen before. Towards what might have been evening, the quality of the light outside shifted in the way that suggested evening, though evening and morning were not quite the same concepts inside the inn as outside it. She heard footsteps on the path. Quick footsteps, not hurried, certain. The footsteps of someone who knows how to move across surfaces. The door opened and the sailor came in with the automatic awareness of a man who has spent decades reading every room he enters as a potential weather event. He assessed the inn in about 2 seconds. Exits, occupants, fire, table. And then something in him let go, and he sat down. He was perhaps 50, perhaps 55, weathered in the way of the sea, not harshly, but completely, as if the sea had been working on him very gently for 30 years and had produced something worn smooth. "I have sailed around the world 3 times," he said. "My name is James. I have been looking for something since I was 19 years old, and I have not found it." The innkeeper set something in front of him and sat down. "Tell me what you were looking for," she said. He could not tell her quickly. He had tried many times over the years, and it never came out right when he tried to say it quickly. "I grew up inland," he said, "far from the sea. A landlocked city, factories, flat horizon in every direction. I saw the sea for the first time when I was 19 and—" He paused. He was trying to describe the thing accurately. "Do you know that feeling when you encounter something and you understand immediately that this is the thing you have been missing without knowing you were missing it?" "Yes," said the innkeeper. "That, multiplied by something large. Standing on a cliff above the sea for the first time and thinking, this is it. This is the thing. I don't know what the thing is yet, but this is where it is." He ate. He ate the way hungry sailors eat, not without pleasure, but efficiently, with the focus of someone who has learned that meals are not guaranteed. "So I went to sea," he said, "worked my way onto a cargo ship as the most junior person possible. Learned, worked up. Eventually had my own vessel, nothing grand, a small sailing boat, enough for one person to handle with care. And I started looking." "For what?" the innkeeper asked. "I didn't know," he said. "I still don't, exactly. I knew what it felt like when I was close to it, or when I thought I was. There were moments, specific places, specific times of day, specific conditions of weather and light. Standing at the bow in the middle of the ocean at 4 in the morning with no land within 1,000 miles and the stars so thick they seemed solid. Sailing through sea fog at dawn when you couldn't see the water and you couldn't see the sky and you were simply inside something. A particular spot off a particular island where the current brought 2 bodies of water together in a way you could see but couldn't understand. A clear line running across the surface where different temperatures met." He looked at the fire. "In those moments I thought, it's close. Whatever it is, it's close. And then the moment passed and I would sail on, and eventually I would feel it again, somewhere else, and I would think, that's it. But I could never get all the way to it. I could never arrive at it. I could get close, and then it would be elsewhere." "Like a horizon," the innkeeper said. He looked at her. It was exactly right. The way that horizons always recede, the nature of a horizon is that it is always at the same distance from you, regardless of how far you travel. You cannot arrive at a horizon. "Like a horizon," he said. "Yes, exactly like a horizon." He paused. "But I didn't understand that until recently. I thought it was something specific that I was missing, a place. A particular place where I would arrive and recognize it and think, here, this is what I was looking for." "And instead?" the innkeeper asked. He ate for a moment without answering. He was working out how to say the next part. "Instead," he said at last, "I think it was the looking itself. I think I was looking for the quality of looking. The particular quality of attention I had when I was searching, the way the world opens up when you're searching it for something, the way you see everything more clearly. The sea at 4 in the morning it wasn't a clue. It was not pointing towards something beyond itself. It was itself. The thing I was looking for was looking at it." He stopped. He looked slightly surprised by what he had said. "I have never said that before," he said. "I know," the innkeeper said. He sat with what he had said. He turned it over. He was a man accustomed to sitting with things. 30 years at sea teaches you to sit with weather and time and your own thoughts in ways that land-dwelling rarely does. "But that can't be entirely right," he said, "because looking with that quality of attention, you can't sustain it indefinitely. You can't walk around in a state of transcendent noticing all the time. You'd have to eat and sleep and buy rope and mend sails and deal with the customs officials at the port. Life intervenes." "Yes," the innkeeper said, "life intervenes." "So the question is, what do you do with that? With knowing that the state you've been searching for is not a place you can live in permanently. It's a state you visit. It comes and goes. What do you do with that?" the innkeeper asked. She returned the question to him in the way she often did, not deflecting, but making clear that this answer needed to come from him. He thought about it for a long time, long enough that the fire shifted twice and the inn settled around them in its quiet way. "I think," he said slowly, "you build a life that has room in it for those moments, that is structured around the possibility of them. Not a life that is nothing but transcendence. That's not possible, and it probably wouldn't be good if it were. But a life where you know what it is you're creating room for." "And your life at sea?" the innkeeper asked. "Did it have that room?" "Yes," he said. "That is why I kept going back. The sea made room. The ordinary parts of it, the work, the navigation, the maintenance, those were fine. They were good work, necessary work. But they existed alongside those moments. The 4 in the morning star moments, the fog, the 2 bodies of water meeting in a visible line. Those moments were possible because I had organized my life around being in a place where they could happen." He finished eating. He pushed the bowl aside. "My wife," he said. He said it differently from how the king had said his wife, or the professor had said Vera. He said it the way you say something that is complicated in a specific way. "Tell me," the innkeeper said. "She left," he said. "Not dramatically. We grew apart, that is the accurate version. She was not a sea person. She had tried. In the early years, she had come on voyages with me, and I think there were moments when she felt it too, or something like it. But she wanted land. She wanted a house that was always in the same place, and children and a garden, and all the things that land offers that the sea doesn't." "And you couldn't give her that?" "I kept thinking I could do both," he said. "I kept thinking I could be at sea for part of the year and on land for the rest. But the on-land part, I was not really there for it. I was present, but not attending. The quality of attention I brought to the sea, I did not bring to the house and the garden." And she noticed. How could she not notice? He was quiet for a while. "I think she was looking for something too," he said. "Just a different thing. Something that stays in one place, something that grows rather than moves. And I could not be that for her." "Do you regret it?" the innkeeper asked. He thought about it with the honesty he had been bringing to everything. "I regret the loss of her," he said. "I do not regret being who I am. And those two things have lived alongside each other for 20 years, and I have not found a way to reconcile them. And I am beginning to think they don't need to be reconciled. They can just be both true." "What brought you here?" the innkeeper asked. "To the end of this particular road. I finished the 3rd circumnavigation," he said. "I came into port, a port I know well, been there many times. And I tied up the boat, and I went ashore,
and I sat in a cafe, and I had a coffee, and I thought, now what?
You hadn't thought that before?
Not like this, he said.
Before, there was always a next voyage, a next route, a body of water I hadn't crossed, a particular crossing I wanted to make at a particular time of year. But I have crossed most of the oceans now, at most of the times of year. There are routes I haven't sailed, but I don't feel the pull toward them I used to feel. And without the pull, I don't know how to move. He looked at his hands, sailor's hands, capable and weathered and slightly curved, the hands of someone who has spent decades gripping things. I think I have been using the looking as a reason not to stop, he said. It came out quietly, as things that have been a long time forming come out. I have been using the search as permission to keep moving, and the sea as an excuse not to not be on land long enough to build the things that land requires. Relationships, roots, commitment to a specific place. He looked at the innkeeper. I am not sure I know how to do those things, he said. I am 53 years old, and I am not sure I know how to be in one place for long enough to let it become home. What does home feel like? The innkeeper asked. When you've had it. He thought about it. The boat, he said. The boat feels like home. That specific small space, everything in its place, everything mine. The sound of it at anchor. The particular motion of it in a harbour compared to the open sea. So you know how to make a home, she said. You have done it. The question is whether a home can be on land. He sat with that. He had never thought of the boat as home. He had thought of it as transport, as vehicle for the search. But she was right. He knew every inch of it. He had maintained it and repaired it and adapted it over 20 years. He knew what it sounded like when something was wrong. He had spent more nights in it than anywhere else in his adult life. The things you know how to do, she said, the attention, the listening to the sounds of things, the noticing of when something has changed, those are not only skills for the sea. They work on land. They work wherever you are, she said. The quality of attention is the quality of attention. The sea taught you to have it, but it is yours now. You can bring it anywhere. He was quiet for a long time after that. The fire was lower now, lower than it usually was in this inn where the fire was always exactly right, and he did not find this alarming. He found it companionable. The way a fire gets lower at the end of a long evening in a way that feels like the evening completing itself. Is there somewhere specific you have been avoiding? The innkeeper asked. On land. Somewhere that has felt too permanent. He thought about it, and something came, not an answer exactly, more like a recognition. There is a town, he said. I sailed past it once, years ago. From the water I could see it on the cliffs. I thought, I should go there. I've never gone. Every time I've come through that part of the coast, I've found a reason not to stop. He paused. I think I avoided it because it felt right. And the right places were the ones I was most afraid of. Because the right places required something from me that the sea didn't. What did they require? She asked. Staying, he said, simply, just that. He went upstairs, eventually. He slept differently than he slept on the boat. The boat moved, always, even at anchor, and his body had adapted to motion over decades. Here, the bed was still, and it took him a moment to settle into the stillness. Then he did, completely. He dreamed of the sea, which was not unusual, but it was a different dream than usual. Usually, he dreamed of the search, of the horizon that receded. Tonight, he dreamed of sitting still on the water. No wind, the ocean completely flat, the stars overhead, the boat resting, and himself resting inside the boat, with the feeling of someone who has arrived somewhere, or perhaps stopped looking for a rival, which amounts to the same thing. In the morning, he ate well, and he sat for a while, and he had the slightly stunned look of someone who has slept more deeply than they intended and has not quite caught up with themselves. The innkeeper set coffee in front of him, the good kind, the kind that does what coffee is supposed to do, which is make the morning feel like something that is worth entering. "The town on the cliffs," he said, "the one I avoided." "Yes," she said. "I think I'm going to go there," he said. "Not for long, necessarily, not as a commitment, just to stop avoiding it, to see what the right place feels like when you actually stand in it." "That sounds like a beginning," the innkeeper said. He looked at her. "I am 53. Is it too late to begin?" "No," she said, with the quiet certainty she brought to things that she was certain about. He drank his coffee. He thought about the town on the cliffs. He thought about the quality of attention he would bring to it, the same attention he had brought to the sea, to the 4 in the morning moments, to the fog and the 2 bodies of water meeting. That attention was his. It came with him wherever he went. He picked up his coat. He went to the door. He pushed it open, the firm push it always took, and outside the morning was clear and the road ran toward the coast. He could smell the sea, not far. He stood in the doorway for a moment and breathed it in. Then he turned back. "Thank you," he said, as all of them said, in the end. "Safe travels," the innkeeper said. She meant it in the broadest possible sense, the sense that covered all kinds of traveling. He nodded. He walked toward the road that led toward the cliffs, toward the town he had been sailing past for 30 years, toward the right place that had been waiting for him to be ready for it. He did not look back. He walked the way he had learned to walk the deck of a boat in all weather, with balance, with attention, with the capacity to adjust to whatever the next moment required. The innkeeper watched him go. She stood at the window and watched the sailor walk down the road toward the coast until he was gone from view. Then she stood at the window for a moment longer, looking at the empty road. 8 guests. One night, or the version of a night that the inn kept, which was not quite the same as the nights outside. 8 roads ended here, and 8 roads began. She turned from the window. She looked at the inn. The fire, the long table, the chairs, the small shelf by the window with the objects guests had left, the ring that Clara had removed, the small book the boy William had gone back through, the notebook the professor had used to write about beautiful mathematics. Each thing a residue of something that had been here and was now somewhere else. Still real, still woven in. She went to the fire and she sat in the chair closest to it. The chair she sat in when there were no guests. Her chair, the one that was worn in the shape of her. She sat and she looked at the fire and she felt the quality of the inn settling into itself. The way any space settles when the people who were in it have gone and it is yours again. Outside, the road was quiet. It was always quiet between guests. Not empty. There was a difference between a quiet road and an empty one. A quiet road was simply waiting. The next person was on their way. They were always on their way. She would be here. She was always here. 8 guests. A knight who had forgotten how to stop and remembered, finally, how to be still.
A young woman who walked away from the wrong life toward the mountains in the east, toward a journal with a blank first page. A lighthouse keeper who had tended the dark for 39 years and discovered that the thing he had been doing was worth recording. An old professor who had spent 47 years in the company of a beautiful unsolved problem and found at the end that the company itself was the point. A boy of 10 who had wandered into the wrong story and found, in the wandering, that he was considerably more capable than he had known. A king who had given away his crown and was learning slowly to see the faces around him without a frame. An old woman who had outlived almost everyone she loved and understood at last that love passes through people into other people without anyone tracking the route. And a sailor who had circled the world 3 times looking for a horizon that receded and walked finally toward a cliff-top town that had been waiting for him. The inn is still there, at the end of the road that only appears when you have been traveling long enough. The fire is still on. The table is still set. The chair closest to the fire is a little worn, in the shape of someone who has been sitting in it for a very long time. The door is never locked. You don't have to be at the end of anything to find it. You only have to be willing to set down what you've been carrying, just for tonight, just long enough to feel the weight of it, and sit by the fire and be quiet, and let the road outside fall still. The innkeeper will put something warm in front of you. She will pull up a chair. She will not tell you what you are here for. You will work that out yourself, in the warmth, by the fire, in the particular quietness of a place that has been listening to travelers for longer than any of them can remember. You are here now. That is enough. Rest well. Good night.